Good evening and welcome to it. This is the Private Property Podcast, where we provide valuable knowledge and information on all things property related. Whether you're a first-time home buyer, a seasoned investor, or you're just looking for some expert advice, we have always got you covered. So tune in every Tuesday and every Thursday at 7 p.m. for tips, insights, and expert advice on burning topics related to property, because this podcast is proudly brought to you by Private Property. Remember, you can find your new home on privateproperty.co.za. Welcome to another episode of the Private Property Podcast. On tonight's show, we'll be unpacking some of the measures commercial landlords can put in place to ensure that they secure their investment and deliver on their promises to all stakeholders. And joining me in studio is John Jack, the CEO of Galetti Corporate Real Estate. But before we dive into that conversation, remember to comment below, share your thoughts about today's show. You can join the conversation by using the hashtag find your new home on privateproperty.co.za and hashtag the Private Property Podcast on all social media platforms. We'll be keeping an eye out for your posts, and we may even feature some of your comments on next week's show. Because this is the Private Property Podcast, where we provide you with valuable information and all the things you need to know that are related to property. Like I said before, I'm joined in studio by John Jack, who's the CEO of Galetti Corporate Real Estate. John, thank you so much for joining me. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's get straight into it. A little birdie told me that you are one of a handful of South Africans who watch the SONA, which is the State of the Nation address, and you believe that the focus on the energy crisis, last week was actually positive. Tell me more about that.
Look, I think a lot of the drama that everyone's saying is they don't want an electricity, minister, and they don't want another minister and all the rest of it. But I actually quite like it because, in effect, what you're doing is you putting it up on the screen. You're saying that's what we need to achieve. This is what this person is in control of. And every single week you monitor it. When we were in COVID, for example, we had this state of disaster, and they were monitored every single week. A lot of the decisions were annoying. A lot of the decisions were people didn't like. You couldn't buy certain things. But let me tell you, there was a focus on that COVID every single week. You couldn't do this, you couldn't do that, you couldn't do the next thing. So hopefully this is the opposite, where you can do this, you can do the next thing. And I think already the budget speech has proved that there are some incentives in place. I mean, I think they're great.
I think we'll talk more about those incentives in a little bit. I do want to ask you, though, what are the current issues that are facing or affecting the commercial property sector? And, how are we going to go about fixing those things?
Look, big issues are obviously the interest rates keep jumping up. So
Right.
Property keeps repricing and repricing and repricing because largely yields track the interest rate high level. Okay. So what we're seeing is that the purchasers and sellers are moving further apart from each other. You're not really sure what your property is worth. That's one problem. Another problem is huge vacancies we see in the office sector. We're still trying to grapple with that. And effectively, what's happened is people just aren't using office the same way. So many people have come back to office. I mean, leases have been signed. There's a massive return to office. It's just that the office that everyone signs now is slightly smaller than the one they took 2 years ago, because they have a flexibility to work, because you don't have to be there at 8 and leave at 5. So there's naturally less of a demand for office, and that just leaves an oversupply. So that's a big challenge for property owners at the moment. The other major challenge for property owners at the moment is getting enough diesel to run these huge generators. These buildings are huge. I mean, the size of the generators are enormous, and office buildings, as you know, don't have much roof space. Industrial is slightly different. Okay, you can go put solar on an industrial roof and that helps you out. But in office, it's different because you stacked vertically. Now you have to run a generator, which means you have to get diesel, and the cost of this isn't fully recovered, which means it's just another cost that the landlord has to bear. And so these are some of the big challenges at the moment. Yeah.
How do you think we can start mitigating these things? I mean, we can't necessarily wait and cross our fingers for the price of diesel to come down.
Yeah.
And we can't sort of go back in time and say, okay, everyone back to the office, because from a personal standpoint, as people who were working in the office and now can see the benefits of a sort of more flexible working schedule, not having to be there all of the time. It's very difficult to go back in time and undo all of those things and now say to everyone, well, everything is back to normal. There's a new normal. So how do we mitigate that for,
Look, I think it's great. I mean, I think the new flexibility is great. People must work the way that they want to. I happen to be in an industry that has always done that. So it's actually no real difference for me. But the reform comes from structural reform. So the inability of municipalities to transfer electricity or through one another's grid is a major problem. So you see in the Western Cape, they're getting a lot of things right. They're getting security right. They're getting load shedding right. They're getting all of these things right. And as you're seeing this massive migration to the Western Cape, and things just work there. I mean, they're really good. They've got a problem with crime. Okay, they've got a high sort of murder rate in certain areas, and I think that falls down to a whole set of other reasons. But structurally, they're doing things well. They're marketing themselves well. Things are working. So in Cape Town, there's not a lot of vacancy in office, right? In Johannesburg, there's a lot of vacancy in office. So it's actually structural reforms. It's nothing that a landlord can do to get it right, because in effect, without any growth in the market, without any GDP growth, businesses aren't growing. So all you're doing is cannibalizing your own other office, or maybe you're taking a tenant from another landlord, but there's no net growth. So it's more of a structural change that needs to happen. We need to be able to get this electricity thing right.
And you think that'll just feed growth back into the...
Yeah. 100%, yes. I mean, I was chatting to Pete Froelich from NISA Capital, and what they do is they fund these big solar projects, right? And so in layman's terms, he was explaining to me that you could effectively have a massive solar farm out in unutilized land in the East Rand, and you could have Unilever in the Midrand, and they could literally buy that power as long as it could wheel through the different municipalities.
Yeah.
The problem is they don't have the ability to do that at the moment, and so this easy solution is now just mired in red tape. But we've got to track towards getting that right.
I hope we get it right very soon.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the actual price of tenant retention, right? Especially now with the next rate hike on the horizon, and the semigration that you've now mentioned, and the empty building spaces that are going unused. I mean, how do we...
So it's less an actual price of tenant retention. It's more about you want to retain your tenants, which means you need to create an environment in your building that is a sustainable one, that people want to be in, that they like to come to work. And I say, you've got to look at offices as though they are a hotel, as opposed to just an office. If you're just going to put up an office, 2-3 floors, there's your office, go for it, you're going to be vacant 100%. But if you turn it into a hotel, it's more of a service. It has an environment. There's a nice place to chill. There's a coffee shop. There's a barista. There's a rooftop garden, a pool. I don't know, a bar. These are the things that start to attract tenants. Fairvest is a great example. Actually, the building that we're in, they had it was an old Sasol building. It looked like an old jail, to be honest. And they went and renovated this thing. They did beautiful foyers. They changed the external look, and then they put a motherland into it, and then the building just filled up over time. So that's just a small example, actually,
of what a coffee shop can do for you.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, coffee shops are the solution to tenant retention.
Correct. And maybe the direct cost of tenant retention is how little rent you charge the coffee shop to be there, because they're actually benefiting you.
That actually makes a lot of sense. Okay, I hear you. What trends are you forecasting in the commercial property sector?
Yeah, so what we're seeing is we're seeing a lot of trade in commercial property at the moment. So a lot coming to market. There's still political uncertainty, macro uncertainty, and so a lot of capital is moving out of the market. But there are strong local players who are staying in the market and are taking these opportunities to buy assets which literally would never come to market. They'd be traded fund to fund, they'd be held in the funds and in the pension funds, and they would never come to market. Now these assets are coming to market, beautiful distribution centers with great covenants. And so what's happening is local guys who are focused on fix SA and invest local are actually able to snap these properties up and add value. And this is the similar thing that happened in the sort of late 90s and early 2000s when there was value coming to market, and they bought them, and we see what happened in the next 20 years. So it's a long-term game, but it's also a bit of a bet.
Because you actually don't know what's going to happen.
Well, you never know. No one ever truly knows. But over time, property has proved seriously resilient, and it ultimately remains a great investment. And once we see electricity sorted out, we'll see higher GDP growth, and that's just going to drive property prices
through the roof.
Yeah.
Wait, this electricity thing, we talk about it like it could happen next week, but
no, it's years. 2 to 3 years, even 5 years. I don't think it's going to be resolved immediately. I did read a stat, however, that the amount of PV panels and batteries and whatnot that's been literally purchased into South Africa, has been imported, is enough to power 2.5 Coburgs.
Wow.
So it's significant private investment. So you'll see it turn around very quickly. I mean, there's been more invested in the last year than the previous 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, the numbers are staggering. That's the business to be in at the moment, for sure.
Someone give me a loan. Apparently, that's the business to be in.
That's business to be in.
How much do I need?
A lot.
Just give me a number, John.
Look, a residential home goes anywhere from 100,000 to 300,000 rand, depending on the kind of system you're putting in. You know, that's not my expertise. I researched it. You know, I wanted one in my own house. But then you've got other opportunities, right? So now privateers can go to companies like Versify or Go Solar, and these guys, you just literally rent it from them. If you want it off your roof, they take it off your roof. It's I don't know why not everyone
That's
has
a
this
thing?
on their, oh yeah, they've had to stop advertising because there's so much
The demand is too high.
They've had to stop advertising. They can't get the panels onto the roof fast enough. They can't import batteries fast
enough to meet the demand.
And for 1,500 rand, which is not insignificant, but it's not that significant if you own a home or you're renting a home that needs a solar system. 1,500 rand extra to never know about load shedding just seems like the best investment ever.
Yeah, like I'd get a side hustle just to pay for that.
Yeah, 1,500 rand a month, you're done.
And because I'll still be able to be online, I'll be able to work for, like, it's going to be great. Yeah. So we can't promote them because they've got too much demand already.
Yeah, they turned off their marketing. I mean, it's great.
That's so wild.
Yeah.
I would love that. So successful. Anyway, what are the macroeconomic factors that are now affecting the commercial property sector at the moment?
Look, it's the political instability. People want certainty, especially in commercial property. It's a long-term asset. You can't, if you decide to sell, you can't just sell today. It's not like a share that you can just trade, right? It's a fixed asset. It takes longer to trade, and you have gearing on it, which means it is a risky asset. You know, you can lose all your equity very quickly if the prices start going down. So you need economic certainty, and there's not a lot of economic certainty because there's no certainty on policies, for example. You know, it changes from time to time. They're very slow moving. So there's just, if we could just get certainty on certain policies and the government would just stick to that and fix the power supply, for example. These are massive factors that impact towards growth. Because it's GDP growth. If you get GDP growth, the property market goes wild. Look at the GDP growth between 2003 and 2008. It was significant GDP growth, and we know what happened to property in that period. So that's what you're chasing. That's what everyone's chasing. But that's the golden number. Yeah.
Okay. So what other policies? Like, what are we talking about
in the country?
Yeah.
So I mean, I would say specifically is that, you know, labor policy, for example, more certainty there, more flexibility there. Mining rights policies, right? So these are all like the charter, the mining charter. It keeps changing. It's not business friendly. You've got other parastatals, for example, Transnet. There's not enough. We produce coal. We need to export coal. Yet they can't get coal out of the country, which is a massive tax windfall at the moment. Coal is in demand in the world like you cannot believe. Anyone who's in the coal business is making so much money, but you know, if they were to get those structural reforms right and move quickly, you'd see a lot of cash flowing in South Africa. People like emerging markets. They do. So everyone's waiting. There's a lot of money around the world which is sitting on balance sheets. People aren't just spending. It's been pulled back from the risky cryptocurrencies, all this kind of thing. And people are sitting with better businesses. They went through COVID. They had to fix their businesses. Sitting with capital, they're ready to deploy, but certainty, that's what you require. And if you don't have that, it just impacts decision.
It's like burning money.
You want to spend 100 million rand, or do you want to keep it in your bank account just until you know? If you knew that you were going to be making more and more and more money, your salary was just going to go up and up and up and up. Well, you buy a new pair of shoes. Why not? I like that. I like that new car. You know, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
With the markets. Yeah.
Okay, I hear you. What advice would you give both to tenants and landlords about, you know, in terms of growing now in this commercial property sector?
Yeah, so it's all about opportunity spotting. Okay, so you get certain landlords who are really clever and creative with the way that they work with their buildings, right? New ideas, bringing new life to it. You know, for example, one of our clients bought a property. It was in George. It used to be a service station. I looked at it. It looked really run down. They bought the thing, and they've turned it into a Whole Foods market all of a sudden. You know,
Okay.
so now you go there. It's the most popular coffee shop in George, just outside Fancourt. They've got a nice restaurant there, and a Whole Foods market, and you know, you turn that thing around, and suddenly you've got a property which was worth not that much, and now it's worth quite a lot relatively to what was invested, and that's really what you want to be doing. But it's difficult because certain landlords view their properties differently, right? So you've got government tenanted buildings, for example. Those you're not really willing to spend so much money on because you're not sure if your lease is going to get renewed, not sure if you're going to get paid, you know, so there's no certainty again. So if the government were to sign a 5-year lease, just like a normal tenant would, then you'd know that you at least have certainty of income for 5 years. So you're going to spend some money on upgrade. But the governments don't, and so they go on a month-to-month lease. So you can't spend any money on the building because you're only certain of your tenure for the next month, and knock-on effect.
Yeah.
You know? And so each landlord needs to look at their building differently. Of course, you've got to have generators or solar if you can. Of course, you've got to have something to make it more homely. Okay, but you look at the industrial guys, the logistics guys. I mean, at the moment, that is the best asset class to be in, honestly, because building prices have doubled, which means that there's no supply at all because no one built any industrial during COVID. So now there's no supply. And all of a sudden, you've got demand for property. It doesn't exist. Building prices price of steel has doubled, right? So to replace these buildings is significant, like 50% more than it was 3 years ago.
Okay.
So that means you need a property. Someone has to build a few, and the rentals are going to be 50% more than the next thing. But that's what you have to do. And all that does is it just pulls the rest of the property into the void, because if you've got one property at 80 and one other property at 40, well, he can charge 60, because what else are you going to do?
Yeah.
You know? And so it pulls all these property prices up. So industrial's a great asset to be in at the moment, yeah.
Okay. And tenants?
I would say, you know, tenants at the moment, you're really in a position where in industrial you want to try and secure a good rate, because the rates are going up. Okay. In office, you want to try and find an environment where your staff is happy and that they're coming to work. So you can create a culture for your business and you can drive growth. That's really what it is, right? So look for those opportunities. Also, at the moment, most landlords are actually, they used to white box their properties, which means they used to literally, doesn't matter what was in there, strip everything out, paint the walls white, and that was it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then the new tenant would come out, they would do their own fit out. And when they left, white box again.
Yeah.
And so that would happen. Today, what's happening is they're leaving the fit out from the old tenant in, and then you go and you say, I could work with this, you know?
Yeah.
Because the cost of the fit out is so significant. And then what you do is you change the fit out. So that's a good idea for tenants. Also be on the lookout for what the incentives are, because the landlords are obviously trying to attract tenants to their building. There are tenant incentive allowances, there are rent-free periods, et cetera, et cetera. And you really have to know the market. So, you know, we're in the advisory business. We help tenants with this. That's what we do. So obviously we would say, find an advisor that you can talk to, that give you proper advice and show you the whole market, show you all the incentives, and has a good idea of how they can get the best deal in place for you.
Yeah.
And then what you've got to do is work out whether it's better to stay where you are and renew your lease, or whether it's better to actually relocate. And sometimes it's actually better to relocate, because maybe you don't need as much space. Maybe it's time to refresh your office. Maybe it's better for staff to be in Rosebank as opposed to Sandton. Or there are a number of factors you need to consider. But in the end of the day, take proper advice on it and make sure that whoever you're dealing with understands the financial implications to you, because that is the biggest.
Where do you think this consultative process should take place? Like, where is the best place to go? I now own this very successful company. I have a workforce of however many hundreds of people.
Yeah.
You know, I want to force them to come back to the office. They want remote work. We're trying to find a nice balance. Like, who do I consult?
Yeah. So the guys in advisory, corporate real estate solutions, that, you know, there are probably 3 or 4 businesses that do this in South Africa. And what you want to do is reach out to them, ask them to understand your situation. You'll hand over your lease agreement. they'll understand your situation. They'll model it out financially. They'll understand what it's going to cost you to move, what it's going to cost you to stay where you are, what's going to cost you to refit where you are. Maybe you need to refresh it or whatever it is. And
add
so,
some greenery, just
yeah,
make the
yeah,
people
yeah,
feel
exactly.
better about.
Exactly. You know, that's what you want to do. And so in that sort of advisory space, guys can help you. It's a very easy solution, and it's available. Yeah.
I'm wondering, like, what are the kinds of I had a guest, I don't know, like last year or something, who was speaking about, these new really large commercial structures, building structures that are really just incorporating a work life and a home life and all of the
Mixed
amenities.
use.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Melrose Arch is an example.
And I'm wondering how much more of that we're going to see, because how convenient would it be to not have to travel and be stuck in traffic for 45 minutes trying to get to your job do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
How much more of that are we seeing in terms of now commercial property investors?
Yeah. So we're definitely seeing that. A lot in Cape Town, we're seeing it. In Johannesburg, we've seen it. Melrose Arch was one of the first examples of it. The thing is that, have you ever tried to live in Melrose Arch? Very expensive. So,
yeah.
Okay, so
I lived in Illovo up the road, and it was as far as I could go.
You know what I mean? It's not for everyone.
Yeah.
So the concept is fantastic, but it's generally the executive C-suite that it's fantastic for. Everyone else is still going to be driving to work, and I can tell you, of the 1,000 people in your business, a good 990 are going to be traveling in as opposed to living in the building. So
because they can't afford it.
Yeah, it's very, very expensive. Why? Because these are new buildings. Okay, well, besides from Melrose Arch, but these are new buildings. Okay, and so new buildings, new building costs, new building prices.
It's just the way it works.
Just the way that it works.
I suppose maybe the pricing will come down, in a few years' time. You can live closer
when
to
people
the
get
office.
bored of mixed use, when they get bored of mixed use and they say, actually, it's not the way to live, then it's going to get cheap. And
like I want to live out in Harties or something.
Yeah.
And I'll scan myself into the meeting and it'll look like I'm there.
Exactly.
Like a Michael Jackson concert, even though he's passed. What would you advise business owners who are currently looking for a new location for their business?
What to consider? I mean, number one is the financial implications.
Yeah, so I was going to say, is it a rent or invest kind of situation that we're going with right now?
Yeah. So, sure. So it's all about sort of your cost of capital. Okay. Have you got a lot of capital on your balance sheet and you can actually deploy it into a property? And so that means that in that property you could see some growth. I would say that we are at the bottom of the market, certainly. And so you might see some growth there, and so it's an investment asset for you. But always with that capital comes, where should I allocate the capital? Should I allocate it into commercial property? Should I allocate it to my business and grow my business? We were talking to a manufacturing distribution client out in the West Rand, and we need to buy a 10,000 square meter warehouse. And I said, but do you need to buy 10? Yes, we must buy this 10,000 square meter warehouse. And I said, look, you sound to me like you're a growth phase business. You are doubling, you're acquiring other businesses, that kind of thing. So the best I can give you as a return, vanilla return on this thing is, 10%, 11%. What are you getting when you deploy that cash into buying another business? They say, oh no, we're sort of 20% plus. Where do you want to put your money?
Yeah.
And they go, that we didn't think about it like that. It was the only way to think about it. Every single one of your rands needs to work for you. If you got hundreds and hundreds of millions of rands, you don't know what to do with it anymore.
Then sure, go ahead.
Sure. Or if that's your focus, to own all your property, then of course, go ahead. McDonald's had a strategy. They want to own it's a property company, not a burger company. They want to own all of the primary corners all around the world, and they do. And that property is very valuable. But for most other people, they're just buying some kind of property. They're not buying specific property with a specific strategy. So it always varies. Of course, you get specialist people as well, where you go and you have a manufacturing plant, let's say a glass smelting plant or whatever it is, and they're going to spend 20 billion on their machinery and maybe 20 million on their warehouse.
Yeah.
Obviously, you must buy the warehouse because you can never move the machinery, And if you go and spend 20 billion, you rent, then it comes to the end of the rental, the landlord's going to have got very clever by that point, So they say, no, just do me a favor and just move your glass equipment out of here, Never. So that's the kind of property that you own.
Okay. I'm going to leave it there.
Thank you.
John, Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I've learned so much. I don't know if I'll ever be able to put it into effect, but I'm still waiting to win the Powerball. So one day is one day.
All of us.
Even you.
All of us.
I wish you the best.
Thank you.
I know it's going to happen for you, John.
Yeah, we'll share.
Thank you so much. It's on camera, so if he doesn't share with me, I suppose I'll be able to sue him. Listen, that's it for the Private Property Podcast this evening. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Sibs Matiela, and I will see you again.